China's clout in the World Economic Forum grows, matching the nation's rising economic influence. How far has the Chinese economy gone? To give us a better idea, Tian Wei sits down with the founder of popular travel website Ctrip. China seeks solutions to patch up an increasingly fractured world. How can the forum help? WEF Managing Director Olivier Schwab tells us how. And new technologies such as artificial intelligence figure in this year's Davos Forum. How far is AI from completely changing our lives? Sinovation Venture founder Kai-Fu Lee gives us his insight.
Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Betts in Beijing. New technology plays a pivotal part in this year's Davos Forum, attracting eyes and ears from all over the world with some innovative technologies and ideas. And one of them is artificial intelligence, or AI. But compared to all its novel triumphs over humans, how far is it from becoming an indispensable part of our lives? To answer that important question, earlier we spoke to Kai-Fu Lee, the founder of Sinovation Venture and a strong advocate of AI. Let's hear his view.
We're joined here in the Congress Center by Kai-Fu Lee, certainly a big name in China when it comes to technology innovation, and certainly an advocate of artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. AI is going to change the world.
Okay, that's a slogan I heard very clearly from you. But Kai-Fu, different governments have their own different AI development plans. China is one of them. United States as well. Secondly, businesses are having a much bigger role coming from even traditional business that do not necessarily have a lot to do with AI. They're doing their own version. And also, you see the debates going on. So what would all of this mean to the real technology development? Things are getting ever more complicated and messy, shall I say.
Well, more resources, more participants, more capital, more talent, that's a good thing.
See, you always see the silver lining of everything.
It's not a silver lining. This is the cloud.
Okay, there we go.
But I think the government plans, I think China has the most forward-thinking techno-utilitarian plan to push the resources, to try things, and then when they break, fix them. I think the Europe is more cautious, debating issues related to privacy, security, and even bias. And I think both are valid, but I think China will probably catch up and make more progress because of the utilitarian approach.
But do you think there's going to be a lot of strategic competition?
Competition.
We've already seen it between China and the United States, it seems.
I think the competition right now at AI is still within U.S. and within China.
I see.
So it's Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent competing against each other, and it's Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft competing against each other.
How are the two versions different from one another?
I think they are similar in that larger gets larger, because AI is something that enhances monopolies. Because if you have more data, create a better product, make more money, hire more people.
That's another thing people have been talking about.
The loop continues in both countries. And I think what's important, both for government and the private sector, is to ensure there is competition. There's new blood. There's venture capitalists like us funding new companies that challenge the big ones.
There we go.
Only when there's competition, only when there are hundreds of AI companies, will consumers have the most choice.
That's really what I want to focus on right now, which is, you know, the investment into AI. People talk about the so-called flying pigs in the air, that there is so much money into it. There's so much interest. People just throwing money into the field. What do you make of that reality? Has that changed?
I think it's tempting for every entrepreneur to package his or her company as an AI company. And it's tempting for every VC to want to say, I'm a VC investor, but an AI investor. But AI investing is not for the novice. For people who try to get into early stage AI without understanding technology, they will lose their shirt. And I think there will be many bubbles that will start to burst towards the end of this year.
I see.
But there will also be a lot of great
bubbles begin to burst. I better catch that word. What kind of bubbles?
Well, individual core company bubbles. The startups that made up a story that isn't fulfillable and fooled VCs into investing because they don't know better. So by the end of the year, we will see some very successful cases pushing AI forward. but also even more bubbles that burst, companies that run out of money become bankrupt. And that could cause the environment to cool for a while, but AI is here to the long term to stay. So we don't really care about short-term fluctuations.
Right. And by the way, how much impact would it have on the investment environment? Because there are so many people that are focusing on AI these days. So when we talk about bubble burst, how much impact it would have on the overall atmosphere?
I think it could be substantial if we look at
You're talking about China or somewhere else?
Everywhere in the world.
I see.
If we look at the year 2000, right, the dot-com bubble kind of brought down the cable companies, tech companies, even Microsoft, right, was brought down, the halved in price.
Mr. Gates may not necessarily agree with you, but go ahead.
Well, but that was history, right? So this time, I'm very concerned, actually, not just the AI, I think ICOs. ICOs are the biggest bubble. That burst may cause some AI bubbles to burst, and that may have trickle-down effect to even tech companies. So I think individual investors should be cautious because there is going to be a bubble bursting in somewhere between the next 6 to 36 months.
There has been a lot of debate about the so-called negative side of artificial intelligence. People are talking about, what about ethics? What about its social impact? What about its taking away the jobs?
Right.
Am I right?
We should be prepared. These are all serious concerns. I think we need to make sure, first, AI is safe, right? So autonomous vehicle can become a weapon, can be taken over by hackers. So we have to protect that. People's privacy, we need to do the best we can. There is a debate from the, all the way the European view that everyone should hold his or her own data and then license gradually to the giants. And then the more utilitarian view that China and maybe U.S. is taking. So we'll see how that plays out. I understand the importance of privacy, but people also need to understand we are explicitly asking users to trade privacy for convenience. And there should be some way of opting out, but most of us will opt in.
Let me go to some of the points you just mentioned, because there could be disagreement a lot about this. Okay, about so-called, you made the choice to trade your personal freedom with the technology.
Privacy, not freedom.
Okay,
privacy,
there we go.
All right.
A smaller world.
Yeah.
But you see, the consumers do not have many choices. That's all they have.
The consumer can choose not to register on WeChat or Facebook.
Yeah, but everybody else is using it.
That is the choice that you have, is to maintain absolute privacy and get no convenience. And give up privacy to some extent, and then get a lot of convenience. Also, I think
that's a forced choice rather than, a choice from the bottom of the heart.
I think this is the fundamentally Europe, UK belief.
Okay.
And I admire them for trying to give more options to consumers. Let's see what they come up with. But also be aware that there are other ways to protect privacy. The Chinese government has put in very tough criminal laws for selling of privacy data. So there are other ways to protect at least the most egregious types of violation. So I think let's let each country innovate on how it will provide more solutions and see what works, and we should all watch and adopt what works.
But I have to argue on, the side of the consumers. There is an information deficit. I mean, the government maybe knows it. The business community maybe know it among yourselves. But, what about consumers like us? We have no way to the data that you're talking about here.
Well,
there is a deficit.
Then I think UK actually leads the world in thinking about ways in which to protect the consumer to the most extreme.
But do you think their way would work?
I think it can work. You could use blockchain technologies. You could use various types of encryption. You could have a licensing model. You could have the user choose different technical providers. But what is for sure is, if you take that kind of a deliberate consensus approach to privacy, it will slow down the progress of technology companies in your country. So that is a trade-off a country has to make.
From the very beginning, you and I were having this conversation. We are talking about the development of AI technologies. Remember, at that time, everybody was so excited. To now, it didn't take long.
No.
People are getting very critical and also skeptical about the development of AI. What do you make of this very shall I say, quite fast the transition of thoughts.
Well, I think some
What's going on here?
Well, some concerns are valid, but we have to plow forward anyway. The biggest concern is AI is taking some of our jobs. And clearly from assembly line workers, customer service, telemarketing, loan officers.
It is taking our jobs. It is. These jobs are gone.
The routine jobs will be gone over the next, I think people argue anywhere between the next 10 to 30 years, the routine jobs will be gone. And that's the part that will be hardest to transition.
Yeah.
Because AI to professionals like you and a physician, doctor, banker can be a tool that can help you do your job better.
Yes.
But to a routine job holder, that job can be replaced in the next 10 to 30 years. And that is a huge issue, and I think we cannot slow down the progress of technology.
Yeah.
We can help people find jobs that are invulnerable to AI.
But the speed of change when it comes to education, social changes, adjusting to AI and new technologies are just not happening as fast, much slower than the technology development.
For sure, that's right.
Is there a way that we can do something about it? Or
well,
we are definitely destined to be a loser here?
No, I think mankind will be a winner because we will create so much wealth and value, and that wealth and value can be distributed to solve these problems.
Yeah.
The problem is, do we have the foresight and the will to make some changes?
What is the answer?
Well, we can change education. We need to have gifted and talented classes and get those people to come out early and to create huge amounts of value so we have more wealth to distribute and save the world. We need to change the work ethic. It's okay to work 30 hours a week. That may be hard to convince a lot of people, but ultimately, when there's less work to go around, when robots are doing our work, when we have the wealth, maybe don't work so hard.
Can that convince you?
No, but maybe we need to slowly get people on board. Maybe we need to create more service jobs, jobs of compassion, right? Helping to accompany older people, have a dialogue and caretaker, helping to wash people who are, disabled, and spend time in the orphanage. All of
options.
These are all things that will make us satisfied that we've contributed something to the world.
Before we go, Kai-Fu, you're a frequenter of the World Economic Forum here in Davos.
Right.
This year, a lot of difficulties because of weather. But you're here once again. So what are some of the questions you are trying to ask in your mind when you're coming here? What kind of answer are you seeking at the end of the day?
Well, I am hoping that despite a lot of nationalism happening in various countries and some irrational leaders in the Western world starting to emerge, I hope in spite of that, that we, the business community, maintains optimistic spirit and long-term belief that globalization is going to be here, it's going to come back and going to make the world a better place.
Kai-Fu Lee, always a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
All the best. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. This is one of the world's best winter resorts. As the new year starts, it's also a wonderland of ideas for movers and shakers from all corners of the globe on how to achieve a better future. Yet things are getting ever more complicated recently as the world is fractured. Will there still be a shared future? As China comes to the center stage of the world, what role will it play? Join me, Tian Wei, on Center Stage in Davos for exclusive interviews and real insight for China in the eyes of the world.
Welcome back. China's elevated role in the forum is due to its rising economic status and its engagement in the global economy. At last year's event, Chinese President Xi Jinping said in the era of globalization, countries are more interconnected than ever, and that it's important for countries to coordinate their development. In this situation, how will China use its status to mend a fractured world? Joining us now is Olivier Schwab, the Managing Director and Head of Business Engagement of the World Economic Forum.
I'm I'm joined here by Olivier Schwab, who is the Managing Director and also head of the biggest business engagement with the World Economic Forum. Sir, welcome to our program.
Good afternoon, Tianwei.
Long time no see.
Yes.
I saw you in Beijing some years ago. You were there covering the Chinese business side, and now you're moving to the business development. Let me ask you a question about that. How do you see the business engagement this time and their views about leadership reflected at the World Economic Forum?
Absolutely. So, as you know, we have at the World Economic Forum, we have 1,000 business partners. Yes. These are, for the most part, large companies, but we also have some young tech pioneers, which are innovative companies, entrepreneurs, and they are part of our business ecosystem. For us, it's very important that the business takes a leadership in all of the issues which we address.
We're going to talk about the leadership issue a bit later, but for now, they all, together with us, listen to Mr. Liu He's speech coming from China, talking about 1 year on since President Xi Jinping's speech last year, which enlightened a lot of delegates at the World Economic Forum. What about 1 year later? Do you think he delivered a confident message?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very honored to have Liu He with us as a continuation of last year's address by President Xi. By the way, we have a very good Chinese delegation this year, both from business and from government, led by Liu He. And for us, what was particularly encouraging was to hear his message about the implementation now of some of the policies around opening, particularly in the financial sector and in the manufacturing sector.
I guess a lot of those in the business community coming over here, they seem to have got the message.
Absolutely.
Talking about China's development, China has very short-term development as long as longer-term visions. 3 years, that's what Mr. Liu is talking about, the three issues, poverty, environmental protection, together with financial risks, and also ultimately up. So how do you see those likely to help us understand what China is having in mind?
Well, I think the topics that were discussed today, that were addressed today, are not necessarily new, right? I think the imperative around particularly taking strong leadership in the climate agenda, which was highlighted by President Xi last year, and again today, are topics that show China's presence on the international stage and collaboration on the international stage around some of these key global topics which we all need to get together to in order to address.
This year World Economic Forum, Olivier, is very strong in the sense of inviting world leaders, particularly from the G20 countries, and they are also going to meet eventually President Trump coming from the United States. And many wonder what's likely to happen at the end of this week, but you see very different leadership style these days when it comes to politics and international governance. How does the World Economic Forum, particularly from your perspective, see that differences?
So we have this year, we have 65 heads of state, heads of government from across the world.
Think about the security.
And I think it shows the need and the sort of the value that these governments attach to coming together in a space where they can meet with their peers, with business leaders, with government, with non-government organizations, with international organizations, right? We have 6 of the 7 G7 countries represented at the highest level. And to answer your question, Davos and the World Economic Forum is a place of dialogue. So we want people to come with different ideas and different mindsets, because that's what ultimately allows us to create solutions for a better future.
Which means when people are fired up in the Congress Hall, you guys are very happy.
Well, as I said, I mean, we want to bring different opinions together. We want to bring the different stakeholders together, because we believe that it is through this mix. Because you see, the fundamental principle of the World Economic Forum is that no single actor alone can address the big issues of this world. Not the business community, not the policymakers, not the NGOs. It's only in creating a platform where you bring these actors together that you can progress.
But at the end of the day, the theme for this year is about a shared future.
Exactly.
But people are a little bit concerned whether a shared future will be created, at least a vision about that will be created at the end of the day.
Well, that is our dream.
When you say a dream is too big, or is it just the right?
No, it's absolutely achievable. Absolutely achievable, and you know, it's about bringing the right ingredients. It's you know, about a recipe, if you will.
Yes.
And you have to bring the right ingredients. You have to provoke the change, and that's what we try to do as a platform.
Fundamental differences, if I could invite your personal opinion, as an instrumental person of the World Economic Forum. I mean, on the one hand, there are very different understanding of globalization, very different understanding about what political leadership should be about. Some combine entertainment with governance. Others think about looking at the world as a whole. So very different ways of looking at things. Would that be reconciled with one forum?
Yeah. So, you know, the theme of this annual meeting is creating a shared future in a fractured world.
Right.
So it's a recognition that the world is indeed fractured. There are social fractures, there are income gaps, there are generational fractures, right? And so how do we come together? How do we address some of these fractures? And what are some of the solutions that we can bring to the table? That's what the forum is about. To answer your question, Davos is, of course, the summit where everything comes together. But our partners engage with us throughout the year on workshops on the 14 big issues which we've identified. These are our 14 system initiatives. I mentioned some earlier: trade, climate change, health, social inclusion, and so on. And so this is a work that takes place throughout the year.
The other thing I really want to ask you is really about technology.
Yes.
You have been putting your heart early on from the World Economic Forum on technology side. You've been working with entrepreneurs for years. So the technology, now the discussion is not about technology development. It's more about the ethical issue, the legal issue. Will we come up with some kind of plan?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. The big questions today are twofold, right? How do we make all this technology which is disrupting us available not to a few elite, but really to the whole of humankind, number one. And number two, how do we harness the positive aspects of, say, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, and mitigate the risks of these new technologies. So for that, we have created in San Francisco the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In the center, we look specifically at a certain set of technologies, and we ask ourselves exactly these questions. And we try to come up with guidelines or protocols, if you will, that we will make available to the public.
Are there already something available?
Absolutely. So we have launched a project in Rwanda. You know, Rwanda has an initiative for delivery of blood via drones in remote areas. And in working together with them and actors from the private sector, we were able to make policy recommendations that are now being implemented.
But people would say cultural difference. You know, there's also national difference when it comes to technology, use of technology. So how would one size fit all? That would be the question. That's the question come to you.
Exactly. So I think a typical example is when we talk about cross-border data flows, right? So how is the regulation that you use for data in one jurisdiction, how does that apply in the next jurisdiction? I'll give you an example. If you drive your autonomous vehicle from one country to the next, what happens to the data in terms of the regulations, right? And these are exactly the type of issues we're trying to address there and find common solutions.
But that is one little experiment that you do with the World Economic Forum, and yet you need to rally all these players in different fields, particularly players that are suspicious of one another. Think about the tech companies these days, bigger even than some of the national government, but some of the industry are very scared of them. They don't want to share anything with them. So you need to bring all these conflicting players together. How could that be done?
So, you know, with the World Economic Forum, we've built the trust of the business community and the governments over 48 years now.
You could say so, but that was a trust before. What about now?
Well, you know, I think we do have that trust from our communities, and I do think this is why they are eager to engage with us and look at some of these issues.
Having said that, though, how do you think Chinese companies, particularly tech companies, are coming into this discussion? Some of the issues in China, of course, are very different from, let's just say, what people are talking about here.
No, so we have some of the leading technology entrepreneurs from China who've been engaged with us for quite some time. Just to name a few, Huawei, Alibaba, JD.com, who just joined us. These companies are extremely active globally, and we welcome them on our platform, and they indeed leverage our platform to make these global connections and work with us on some of the issues that we all face.
It's great to see Huawei, Google, and Tencent, they could all work together under one roof.
Exactly.
Given some of the issues we have seen over the years.
Exactly.
But before we go, one important question. World Economic Forum, you aspire to be an international organization, made that transition already, but there are a lot of issues that it seems that public-private partnership still needs to be resolved before it becomes a reality. Tell us how you're going to do it.
Yeah. So what we do really is we're a catalyst for action, right?
Okay.
So as I mentioned earlier, we sort of create the recipe. We bring the right leaders together from business, from government, from civil society, the expert groups, and we try to find some of the solutions to the most pressing problems we have today. I mentioned two initiatives earlier that were spun out of that activity. I could mention another, which is already a little bit older, which is Gavi, the Global Alliance Against Vaccination and Immunization, which was incubated at the forum. And then became an independent entity. So this is typically the type of work which we do with all our global participants.
Olivier Schwab, wonderful to see you here in Davos, just as it was wonderful to see you and work with you in Beijing years ago.
It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you so much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And now with more on the World Economic Forum, let's go now live to Davos and the host of World Insight, Tian Wei, who's standing by with more. Hi, Tian Wei.
Thank you. Thank you over there. This is Davos and beautiful sunshine behind me, and I'm also joined by the first-timer here in Davos, Mr. James Liang Zhang, who is the co-founder and also chairman of ctrip.com. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
How do you like it? First time?
Yeah, it's very exciting. A lot of great ideas and great discussions.
Very busy.
Yeah.
I saw your schedule earlier, all tight. So tell me about today, because this is a big day for China. It's supposed to be China Day. Mr. Liu He earlier delivered his speech. People are talking about China's reform. What is the significance, do you think, that we are still looking at reform as the way forward?
Well, I think a big part of it is China's need to be, upgrade its capability of innovation. And to be a great innovators, you need to collaborate with the rest of the world. So China needs to be very open, and the world can benefit from China's innovation. So it's in the world interest to be open to China as well.
Of course, about innovation, your company plays an important role in bringing Chinese guests and also international travelers into around the world. So at this point, how much is China contributing to tourism around the world? What is the characteristics of China's part?
Yeah, China sends probably more tourists than any country in the world. And they are big spenders anyway, so they travel, they spend on hotels, air tickets, but they also buy a lot of things for all the countries in the world. And they also bring a lot of energy and ideas to other parts of the world, not just business travel, but not just leisure travel, but there's a lot of business travel, cooperation between companies. So that's going to be a very important for many economies in the world.
What about the characteristics of Chinese tourists or Chinese business people when they're traveling? Is there something that you could do better with connectivity?
Well, the characteristic is that they are very curious. You know, they're not only looking for like the tourist destinations, but they also travel to, for example, a lot to Israel to look at the best innovative companies. And a lot of Chinese are traveling to Silicon Valley, to Boston area, and even to Seattle. And there's a lot of interest in culture, technology, and all kinds of activities. I think this trend will be continuing for a long time.
We see different layers of communication, isn't it? At the World Economic Forum, this is about the global elites, in a way, quote unquote, coming together and brainstorm about the most important issues. And when you're talking about tourism, it's really people-to-people exchanges that we're talking about. Having said that, though, I know travel is only part of your professional interest. In fact, you are very interested in the demographic change of China. Here at the World Economic Forum, the social impact of issues we've been discussed a lot. Tell me about, first of all, China's family planning policy has changed, been adjusted. What would it mean for the economic opportunities and also international impact when it comes to this policy?
Well, I think more and more economists start to appreciate the importance of demographics. Having a young, large cohort of workers, that's going to be very important for innovation. China, the recent relaxed one-child policy is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. China needs to actually, like many countries, to adopt a pro-fertility, like a pro-fertility policy.
Why would you argue in that way? Why would you argue in that way? It's not necessarily the mainstream policy yet.
Well, because you're just allowing people to have 2 kids doesn't mean everybody will have 2 kids. And we all know that in order to keep the population stable, you need to have every woman needs to have average 2 kids. But a lot of women, because career, many other reasons, can only have 1 kid, and a lot of people actually remain single. So you need a lot more people to have 3 kids and 4 kids to make up those people who don't have.
This is really tied, I mean, the demographic issue to many of the issues discussed at the World Economic Forum, because people talk about labor issues. People talk about the impact of technology on the labor. But now there's also more complicated factors such as demographics. So when you working as a high-tech company, thinking about all of these factors working together, what would it mean for the Chinese economy? If you could be more specific and help us to understand numbers and also scenarios.
Well, the source of the advantage is you have the talent pool, right?
Yes.
China is 4 times the population of the U.S., and the economy is almost as big as the U.S. And the percentage Chinese invest in R&D is almost catching up with the U.S. So we're talking about same dollar amount invest in R&D, and with Chinese salary is only like half of the U.S. or a quarter of the U.S. So you have a lot more researchers invested in R&D. That's why China is, in the last decade, has been doing so well in the innovation sector. And in the future, because of AI, because of the new kind of energy technology, require large market, and then very importantly, big data require larger population. China will continue to do well because of the huge talent pool. The downside is actually China in 10, 20 years from now, because the cohort size of the then 20 or 30 or 40-year-old will be the people who were born in the 90s, which is a much smaller cohort than people who were born in the 80s. But the 2-child policy will help a little bit. If China can continue to adopt a pro-fertility policy, it will remedy the situation will be a little bit better going forward. Of course, U.S. Is also very strong, and U.S. particularly with its, if they adopt a good immigration policy, can still continue to attract talents from the world. So the race between U.S. and China is very interesting to watch. It's not a zero-sum game. So if we'll continue to talk about this race between China and U.S. in innovation in the next 10, 20 years, And both countries actually will do well, and the world will do very well.
A healthy competition and a healthy debate, I guess, about that part. But it is only the numbers that we're talking about. What about the quality? Because we talk about the high tech. This year is mainly about the impact of new technology, whether it is linked to the ethical issues, the legal issues. So when you have all of these issues democratically being discussed, what about the educational part, legal part? All of this needs to be combined in a way into the discussion.
Yeah, well, China's strength is actually in engineering and science.
So far.
If you look at the test score, the math, or look at number of PhDs going into this field, China's doing very well. So I think for fields like energy, like AI, China will do very well. But if you talk about entertainment, social science, China is still a bit behind. So I think U.S., China, or the rest of the world, like India, companies all have their relative strength. But there will be a healthy competition all around.
In fact, all of these countries are present at this time in World Economic Forum, United States, China, and India with their huge delegation. So here's the thing. What would be the relationship and the kind of scenarios business community, such as represented by you and others here at Davos, would like to see when it comes to geopolitics? As you may know, Mr. Liang, geopolitics is changing so fast. And as we speak, there are things going on right now. So what does it mean to the business community?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities for business community, especially those companies who can leverage the global talent pool. So that's why I'm always arguing you need an open environment for the free movement, not just goods, but also ideas and people. Chinese companies now cooperate a lot with the U.S. companies, and we recently made acquisitions in the U.S. and in the Europe, UK, to leverage the talent pools in those countries. And those companies can do that, can leverage well the global talent pool, will be very doing very successfully.
That's part of China's business going global, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not just part of it. I think for U.S. companies as well, they need to leverage the talent pool in
So this
China.
is a competition about talent.
Exactly, yeah, this competition about talents. If whoever can become the hub of innovators that can attract talents around the world, within their own countries as well, will do very well.
Well, Mr. Liang, before we go, I do want to ask you a very final question. You know, we are going to see a lot of state leaders coming over, including from the United States. And of course, China and the United States these days are going through a period of transition when it comes to the nature of relationship. From your perspective, what is the most important thing that the two countries need to bear in mind as a business person and also as a researcher about future scenarios?
Well, to bear in mind, this is not a zero-sum game. The future economic race will be race of innovation. But innovation is not a zero-sum game. If you innovate, not only me benefit, but the whole world will benefit. And the innovation is a global. So innovation isolated in one country will not be very prosperous. So I think both countries will realize that keep open the ideas flow and the people flow very open. It will be good for both countries.
When it comes to rhetoric coming from the other countries, how China should react as a business person, how would you react? For example, there could be trade conflicts in the very near future. Actually, it is going on right now.
Well, I think the business and the trade, especially the physical goods trade, is less. It's actually very featured prominently in the news and things like that. But actually, it's a smaller part of the overall economy. The service trade, the tourists, the idea flow, I think is actually much more important. As long as we keep that open, we're going to be fine.
There we go. Those are the ideas that have been discussed over here at the World Economic Forum. James Liang Jianzhang, who is the co-founder and also chairman of ctrip.com, and actually also very well-known demographic researcher from China. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
My pleasure.
All the best. I hope you're going to enjoy Davos.
Thank you.
First time. And there we go. And this is me, Tian Wei, bidding you goodbye from Davos for today. But we're going to have more special interviews coming to you tomorrow from our special program, China on the Center Stage here in Davos. If you want to look for us, try to find our YouTube page, World Insight, and also try to look for us on Facebook, Twitter, together with Weibo. On behalf of my team back in Beijing, this is Tian Wei bidding you goodbye, and I'll see you tomorrow here also in Davos.